And a very happy Thursday to you at 12:07 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, The John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, the fires are still raging in Los Angeles County. Thankfully, some of the fires that sprouted out last night are already under control, including the Sunset Fire, which was going on in the Hollywood Hills. But the Palisades Fire continues to be incredibly destructive. It has grown to 17,230 acres, 0% containment. Thousands of structures have been destroyed. Thousands of structures still threatened. You have the Eaton Fire, which has devastated major parts of Altadena and the Pasadena area. That one they have kept at 10,600 acres, but we've had 5 fatalities and an untold number of structures destroyed there. This isn't getting any better anytime soon.
I saw last night that Runyon Canyon was on fire. Does that mean we don't have to exercise anymore?
Well, you shouldn't exercise outdoors because the air quality is garbage.
So listen to this. This, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal has confirmed that the LA fires are now the costliest fires in U.S. history, with economic damages currently estimated to be at least $50 billion. That's billion with a B.
And the fires aren't even out yet. Who knows how much more destructive this is going to get? But just based on traffic patterns the last couple of days, there's a whole lot of work not getting done the last 2 days.
And there's a lot of criticism on social media regarding the response from the city of Los Angeles and the mayor not being here when the fires broke out.
Karen Bass finally came back from Africa yesterday. She held her first press conference at 5 p.m. I took it live on the News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I only say that because I want credit. I found this first.
But make no mistake, Los Angeles will rebuild stronger than ever. Right now, if you need help, emergency information, resources, and shelter is available. All of this can be found at URL.
URL?
Mother Goose was jet-lagged.
She sounds like Grampy Joe trying to give out a website.
I think I deleted those all from the main list. But no, I can pull one up. Hold on. I'll get you a Biden drop. You want a Biden drop? Because
I want a Biden drop.
These are going to be so irrelevant so soon, so we got to use them.
Visit vaccines.gov. Vaccines.com.
Did you see that he fell asleep at Jimmy Carter's funeral?
Well, that's what happens. Didn't Bill Clinton fall asleep at George H.W. Bush's funeral? Oh, here's another Biden.
Google, quote, COVID test near me. Go there. Google, COVID test near me on Google to find the nearest site where you can get a test.
The stiff in the casket look more alive than Biden.
But make no mistake, Los Angeles will rebuild stronger than ever. Right now, if you need help, emergency information, resources, and shelter is available. All of this can be found at URL.
Okay, let's type that in and see if they have information.
All right, I'm going to type in URL. I'm going to do a Google on the YouTube, URL. And I'm searching. A uniform resource locator, also known as a web address, is a unique identifier used to locate a resource on the internet.
Well, if your home burned down, I'm sure that's helpful.
Although this is funny. If you Google URL and then you go to the news tab, the first 2 stories, Karen Bass bungling through a press conference. So I guess it does help if you search URL.
Well, with all those phony degrees she has from USC, you'd expect more from her.
Last night, she was also asked about some of the criticism of her fire response, including the fact that she was in Africa for the first day and a half of this and knew that the winds was going to be historic and destructive and stayed in Africa until it got real bad.
In addition to the concerns about water pressure, there's also been criticisms from Rick Caruso, who said there was insufficient brush clearance by the city and county, from others who pointed out...
Don't twist the knife and mention Rick Caruso. She's already pissed off.
I love the fact that they're pushing back on this. including on Fox 11. I don't know if you saw it, but on Good Day LA, they played the clip of Rick Caruso making the claim that there wasn't any water in the fire hydrants. And the anchor fact-checked them and said, well, we haven't received any confirmation from the fire department. Then they throw it to Gigi Graciette in the field, and she said right out of the gate, yeah, there was no water in the fire hydrants. Everyone's really upset about it, including the firefighters.
Well, there you go. Melvin got his confirmation.
From others who pointed out that the fire department has seen a reduction in its budget last spring, and that you were overseas when you should have been here. And I'm wondering.
So some of the criticism, because it's hard to hear this reporter, is the fire hydrants that didn't have water, that Karen Bass wasn't there, that she cut the budget to the fire department, that Rick Caruso claimed the brush in the Palisades hadn't been cleared in 40 years. What do you have to say for yourself, Karen Bass?
Did any of these claims hit the mark? And if not, what is the risk?
Well, let me just say that we are actively fighting this fire, and this is a time for vigilance.
Yeah, she's not going to answer that.
Of course not.
And action, not speculation. This is a time for...
This isn't speculation. There was no water to fight the fire. There was no way to use the air vehicles. There was no way to use the planes or the helicopters because the wind was so bad. And when the firefighters went for the fire hydrants, there was no water pressure. They drained the tanks. How were there only 3 tanks?
What is left to confirm this story, where you have the firefighters on the ground making the claim? You have the homeowners on the ground making the claim. You have the news reporters who are there verifying it. You have Rick Caruso, who's out publicly making the claim. I love that they act like this is still a jump ball.
This is a time for Angelenos to come together, unite.
No, it's time to wonder what the hell happened with our leadership. Did Lahaina come together after it burned down? No, Lahaina pissed off.
We pay a fortune in taxes to the city government, the state government, the county government, the federal government. And in theory, in exchange for paying what we pay, we're supposed to receive excellent government services. They spend the money on everything. We have harm reduction departments. We have health care for illegal aliens. But we don't have enough money to make sure there's an adequate supply of water in the fire hydrants.
I know how much people pay for their DWP bills, and the DWP did not have the proper infrastructure to make sure that in a devastating fire event that we've had in the Palisades in the past, that the fire hydrants could have the water pressure. Meanwhile, the new chief of DWP, Janice Quinones, makes $750,000 a year. That's right, she makes more than Barbara Ferrer.
And I love her response. She essentially is making the claim, well, we were using a lot of water, so what do you expect? We were using more than we could fill it up with. Well, you should have a plan for that. That's what you do for a living, and we pay you handsomely. Figure it out.
United to protect themselves and their families and also each other. So what we are seeing is the result of 8 months of negligible rain and winds that have not been seen in LA in at least 14 years.
I'll give it to her on the wind. That's the worst wind I've ever felt, and I'm almost in LA for 40 years because I'm almost 40. But we've had drought plenty of times, and we've had wind events where the fire helicopters and the planes and the super scoopers could not operate, and we have not seen this level of destruction.
No, I'm not going to blame her for the wind. I'm not going to blame her for the weather. I'm not going to blame her for any of that. What they deserve blame for is the fact that there was no water in the hydrants. That is a failure of government. If you allow that to happen, you failed.
It's a deadly combination, and I've been in constant contact with our fire commanders on the ground and our
I mean, when you were on the plane coming back from Ghana?
And she was told, by the way, I thought it was 2 days ahead of time that there would be severe winds and fire risk. She was told apparently a week ago, a week before the fire started, she was warned, and she chose to go to Ghana anyway.
Well, we all knew that this was going to be a horrific wind event as soon as the 7-day forecast came out.
And our partners at every level of government. I've spoken to President Biden.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. And also Biden getting that briefing from the LAFD people yesterday with the photo op with Gavin Newsom. That was a waste of everybody's time.
My favorite part was when he was talking about all the destruction going on in Los Angeles. And then at the end he goes, but on a positive note, I'm a great grandpa.
President Biden's chief of staff, Secretary Mayorkas from Homeland Security, Secretary Todman from Housing and Urban Development, Senator Padilla, Governor Newsom.
What are they talking to HUD about? Are they going to build some slums on the ashes of the homes that burned down in the Palisades?
She is doing what members of Congress do. She is not a mayor. She is not an executive. She is not a leader. She is a fish out of water.
Governor
Barbara Lee, this could be you, because she wants to be mayor of Oakland.
Well, this is going to be her.
Governor Newsom. This is going to be an effort.
Gavin had to cancel his trip to D.C. to Carter's funeral.
Oh, poor guy.
Gavin had this whole plan all week to seem like this big national figure, and now he's in hiding.
And he couldn't take selfies with the body.
This is going to be an effort of all of us coming together, and we have to resist
Nope, no room for pointing fingers here, John.
No, of course not.
any effort to pull us apart. In terms of my flight home, I was on a military flight, as I mentioned, which allowed me.
But you can't get any airline miles for that.
No, and I'll say this. It looked like at LAX she was on a commercial carrier because a reporter from Sky News cornered her on the jet bridge and was asking her about the fires, and she just stood there stone-faced without answering any of the questions.
Oh, we'll play that for you shortly. So what happened was she got on a military plane to get from Ghana to DFW. She had to fly Southwest or American from DFW to LAX.
I see.
Which
means Karen Bass may have had the situation where she was texting, she was on the phone, she was doing everything she could to coordinate fire response, and then got interrupted and asked if she wanted to join American Advantage.
You want a life hack for all you American flyers out there? If you know someone with a T-Mobile number, use that. You'll get free internet.
Which allowed me to be in constant communication. I was on the phone, on the plane, almost every hour of the flight. So although I was not physically here, I was in contact with many of the individuals that are standing here.
I can mayor remotely.
She sounds like a deadbeat dad, doesn't she? Sure, I wasn't there for your Little League game, but, I'm just a text message away.
Throughout the entire time, when my flight landed, immediately went to the fire zone and saw what happened in Pacific Palisades. Thank you.
Did you also have access when you were on your commercial flight?
I did have access on my commercial flight, like most people do.
So she knows someone with a T-Mobile number.
We're just getting started. We got a lot of Karen Bass from yesterday, a lot of Karen Bass from today, and a lot of other elected officials, including Catherine Barger going off on the looters, Nathan Hochman going off on the looters, Robert Luna going off on the looters, and Lindsay Horvath wasting everybody's time for 6.5 minutes.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to go back and listen to an episode from earlier this week, that's easy to do.
We call those episodes the before times, before Los Angeles burned to the ground. Go to KABC.com, click on podcast, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts. Podcasts of a simpler time, where all we had to worry about was what was the crazy crime story that Ed Laskos was reporting on today.
And it's on, like Donkey Kong.
And Randy, we're on the move in the Bay Area.
So we do a version of Fix California Hour that airs weeknights at 11 o'clock on KSFO. In the Bay Area, KSFO moved from 560 AM to AM 810, a bigger, stronger signal. That one reaches out to Sacramento, most of Northern California. And at night, that signal gets very powerful. You can even hear it down here. So turn on AM 810 at 11 o'clock at night if you're around. Set a preset.
Right now, we're going through the sound of the press conference on the fires.
Let's hear what happened today at the press conference, including opening with Catherine Barger going after all of the people who've been arrested in the Pasadena-Altadena area of looting, because L.A. County is full of the worst of the worst.
In the midst of the emergency, we've all seen individuals who are targeting vulnerable communities by burglarizing and looting homes. This is simply unacceptable. You will be hearing from our DA, Hochman, shortly.
Thank God it's Hochman.
I love that everyone just calls him by his last name.
Hochman.
Regarding his efforts to hold these individuals accountable. And I promise.
Well, and no offense to anybody named Nathan, because I know a very scary Nathan, but usually Nathan is not a very scary name.
He's going to be on the show, by the way, today.
You will be hearing from our DA, Hochman, shortly regarding his efforts to hold these individuals accountable. And I promise you, you will be held accountable. Shame on those who are preying on our residents during this time of crisis. The emergency order will be strictly enforced by the Sheriff's Department, who are proactively patrolling to protect these communities from looting and any criminal activity. They have made 20 arrests of individuals who will be held accountable for the actions that they've taken.
You know she was serious because she said accountable twice.
You know, in the old days, in the Wild West, if there was a situation that resulted in looting, you think Wyatt Earp would come to the town square and say, if we catch you looting, you're going to be held accountable? No, in the old days, it's all looters will be shot.
Accountability, accountability, accountability.
Now, this was the press conference that happened at 8 o'clock this morning, and we carried it live here on KABC, and we wanted to make sure that people could hear the most important, relevant information that was out there. So, John, here's the question I have for you. How many speakers do you think we had to go through before we got to the fire chief?
Oh, plenty.
L.A. County Fire Chief was 4th. L.A. City Fire Chief was 5th. First it was Barger, then it was Karen Bass, although they kept their speeches fairly short. But then L.A. County Supervisor for the 3rd District, Lindsay Horvath, gets the microphone. And again, people are tuning in, not just across Southern California, but across the world to get the most relevant information on what is going on this fire. And Lindsay Horvath proceeded to bloviate for 6 minutes and 36 seconds with no relevant information.
By the way, all of this shows you how much they regard the fire chief. Can you imagine in any other setting where you hear from the fire chief 5th? Imagine going to the hospital because you're going to be diagnosed with something, and you talk to 4 other people before you talk to the doctor.
Well, here's what's interesting, too. Day 1 of this, when Karen Bass was in Africa, the speaking order was fire chief, then nonsensical politicians, then Gavin making this about himself. Once Karen Bass gets back in town, no. Lindsay Horvath, more important than 2 fire chiefs.
Well, every interview I've seen with this fire chief prior to these fires, when she was appointed to be the chief, when she was introducing herself to the people of Los Angeles, she made it very clear that her mandate was to bring DEI to the fire department, that she was there to hire more women, hire more lesbians, make sure that it was more reflective of Los Angeles. Well, okay, fine. That's your mandate. But if that's your number one priority, then making sure water is in the fire hydrants is somewhere below that. And that's part of the reason why you're seeing what you're seeing on television. They don't regard the nuts and bolts, the fundamentals of their job to be the most important aspect of what they're supposed to do with their time.
We're going to play just a little bit of Lindsay Horvath and see if there's any relevant information. And, John, when you just can't take it anymore, you're going to have to scream.
The strength and resilience of Los Angeles County is more than anything we are seeing on the ground. I know this.
No, I'm done. I can't.
What's the point of going on and on and on about these sorts of things at this press conference?
There is none.
I think if she, in her mind, if she just ground on for ever and ever and ever, she gets more FaceTime on camera than the rest of them. I think that's what she's doing.
It is disgusting, and it is a waste of everybody's time. The least important person up there is Lindsay freaking Horvath.
And this is what we got to listen to before the fire chief.
Then the fire chief spoke. They gave out the relevant information that people wanted to hear. Then it was Robert Luna's turn to go after the looters.
We continue to...
Only in Los Angeles is the second most important aspect to fires that have burned down communities the fact that there are a-holes stealing from all the evacuation zones.
Well, that part's expected.
We continue to conduct roving patrols, manning hard road closures, providing security in evacuation areas to prevent anyone who may be tempted to engage in criminal behavior like looting.
Not ready for prime time, Luna.
No, he's not.
I'll give him a pass, though. I don't think any of these people have gotten much sleep lately.
Or behavior like looting. It was mentioned earlier before by the supervisor, and I'm going to make this crystal clear to everybody out there. Over last night and this morning, we are up to 20 individuals who chose to go into our areas and deprive of their property. Absolutely unacceptable. And I'm going to give direction to our department members. As you know, when we have an evacuation order by law, if you remain in that area, you are guilty of a misdemeanor. If you commit certain crimes, it could jump up to a felony. I'm going to be asking our employees to start enforcing that. That is very different than a curfew. Why? Because it's 24/7. I don't have to wait for the sun to go down or the sun to come up.
Luna's going to start cracking skulls.
Think about this for a second. People are looting right and left. We've already made 20 arrests. And his big threat is that he's going to charge you with a misdemeanor if he catches you doing it.
Well, that's just if you are in the evacuation zone when you're not supposed to be. If they catch you burglarizing, there's a new sheriff in town, and his name is Hawkman, and he might actually charge you with a felony.
But that's not going to resonate with anyone who's thinking about looting in an area that was just destroyed by a fire.
Well, and we know the arrest rate for these kinds of crimes. If they caught 20, that means that there's 100 out there that didn't get caught.
See, here's what he should say. If you're out and you're looting, here's what's going to happen. We're going to catch you, and then that's when we're going to turn the body cam off. After we turn the body cam off, I'm going to throw you on the ground and do the flying knee drop right into the small of your back 4 or 5 times.
If you are in one of these areas and you do not belong there, you are going to be subject to arrest.
And what makes now different than fires past, because I remember when the Palisades was set on fire about 3 or 4 years ago, and the then district attorney, George Gascon, said, don't blame the homeless man. He was probably just trying to keep warm.
With meth?
That was an interesting fire because George Gascon went on television and claimed that the person who he later found out to be a homeless arsonist was probably just cold. Eric Garcetti and Mike Bonin held a press conference to calm down the pissed off people that were losing their homes. And they started screaming, recall Bonin, recall Bonin. And that's when Garcetti said this.
I've received things on both ends.
That was a special day.
And from the DA's office, if we do get these cases, please be on notice that we are going to try and deter you from committing the crimes in the first place. But if you do commit these crimes, do not expect anything else than maximal punishment.
This is Hawkman's first test in a major crime event, and it looks like he's going to pass it.
Well, this is an easy layup.
It would have been for Gascon, too.
I don't think so. He would have gone on TV and said, well, what we really need is restorative justice. So if we catch you looting, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go rent a room at the Hampton Inn, and we're going to put 2 chairs facing one another, and we're going to put you in one, and we're going to put the 90-year-old homeowner who just lost everything they own in the other, and then you two can talk it out before you go down for your complimentary breakfast.
Well, John, once we got to the question and answer portion of the press conference, things started to get ugly. Because these reporters, and now you don't just have local reporters, you have national reporters on the scene at these press conferences, and they're not putting up with Karen Bass's BS, and Karen Bass doesn't want to deal with the questions. Are you ready to see what happened with her and a CBS reporter?
Let's hear it.
Jonathan Bigliotti with CBS News for Mayor Bass, please. Mayor, L.A. County is in a panic state. It began 2 days ago with the Palisades fire. My crew and I arrived shortly after it started, and for several hours we watched as hundreds of homes in a neighborhood burned to the ground. We did not see a single fire engine. We watched as good...
And that part of that is that the fire trucks couldn't get up there because everyone abandoned their cars on Sunset Boulevard, and they had to bulldoze the cars.
Yeah, that wasn't a Phi Beta Kappa decision.
We watched as good Samaritans guided traffic. There was fear, and there was a lot of confusion. You were out of the country at the time. Shortly after the fire started, a press release was put out warning of this fire behavior. My question to you is, what explains this lack of preparation and rapid response?
Let me just say, first and foremost, my number one focus, and I think the focus of all of us here with one voice, is that we have to protect lives. We have to save lives.
You didn't.
No. In fact, your negligence led to the costliest fire in the history of the country.
We have to save lives, and we have to save homes. Rest assured that when
that did not happen.
Assured, let me finish.
She's getting pissed.
Rest assured, when that is done, when we are safe, when lives have been saved and homes have been saved, we will absolutely do an evaluation to look at what worked, what didn't work, and to correct or to hold accountable any body, department, individual, etc.
What about yourself?
Well, accountability means nothing, so sure, why not?
How about the head of the DWP that makes $750K and couldn't explain why the fire hydrants didn't work?
None of this matters unless she's actually worried that she's going to lose her job. And therein lies the question, because you look at areas that got hit hard by the fires. Pacific Palisades. That's one of the bluest areas in all of Los Angeles. I don't have the voting data in front of me, but I bet you they voted for her over Rick Caruso by wide margins. They have to start changing how they vote if they want a different response from the government. And I know there are people out there who think that, okay, this will be the wake-up call. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. What she's going to do is she's going to declare this to be a massive success by the city of Los Angeles. They're all going to thank one another for their leadership. They're going to praise one another for leaping into action. And when the LA Times writes about it and when NPR talks about it, it's going to portray them in a glowing light, and I think they're going to go back to voting for her.
But my focus right now is on the lives and on the homes.
Do you think...
Was it your focus when you said, I'm going to stay in Africa?
Well, she decided to stay in Africa before the fire started, when she was warned that this exact scenario could happen.
Do you think your leadership was effective while responding to this disaster?
I just said what I believe is the most important thing for us to do right now, and that is going to continue to be my focus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whenever a politician starts talking about their focus, you know they're pissed.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Margaret writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and says, I don't care what kind of plane Karen Bass flew back to Los Angeles on. She should have never left in the first place because her priority should be the city of Los Angeles, not a party for someone in Ghana. Anyone who has internet received notifications well in advance that the winds were going to be life-threatening. And those are not my words, but the words of the media reporting on the weather.
That is very true, and she decided to leave the country anyway. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. 800-222-5222 is telephone number. Let's go to Harold in Porter Ranch. Harold, hello.
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen. Thoughts and prayers for the people affected, unfortunately. How you guys doing?
Good.
So, a few things that the reporters need to ask as far as this situation is concerned is, in the past, when they had a weather issue like this before, people were told to conserve water. If you'll notice, they were told to conserve water after the fact. I'm very familiar with the Palisades area. If I were to be put into there, I'd be scared. A lot of the stuff is just too close together. There are easier ways to die. I'll just put it to you that way. And I say this as someone who trained over a decade ago, but even then, my biggest thought or the thing I was most frightened about, excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous, is what they call urban wildland interface. In other words, actually it's probably reversed, wildland urban interface. What it basically is it's the thought that fire comes out of the mountains or out of the brush and into the city, which is exactly what happened. Another point is Karen Bass is not the president. Karen Bass isn't a general. How many phones did she have? You saw the press conferences. How many people did they have up there at one time? If she had to contact each and every one of those people at the same time, would that be possible? I don't think so. Like right now, another concern was, where were the strike teams? Where was the mutual aid? The mutual aid should have been brought in before the wind event. Right now I'm looking at 4 OES fire engines, and I'm trying to figure out where they were from. They're probably stationed out of Sacramento, but they may be some local areas. But I saw Fountain Valley, Newport fire. Now, if I were to go to Newport Beach and I wasn't familiar with the area, that might affect things. My point being is they should have been here a few days before doing reconnaissance. Maybe they were. I don't know. But from what I seem to hear from the news and stuff is they weren't. All this mutual aid that they're calling in should have been pre-positioned before all this happened.
Well, and what they say in the press conferences is consistent, and that was essentially that they were caught flat-footed. When they're asked about the fire hydrants not having water, well, we were using a lot of water. Well, of course you're using a lot of water. There's a fire, but you didn't plan ahead. You don't have a plan B. There's nothing that you can do that can get the water in there faster so you can continue to fight the fire. This is all they do. This is what the fire department is here for. It's like what happened with the Secret Service when Trump got shot in the head. Well, we can't be perfect. Exactly. Well, okay, you can't be perfect, but you failed at your most important task. We're just supposed to shrug our shoulders and go, okay, well, you get a mulligan. No, that's not how it is. If I'm bad at my job, some jobs are more important than others. If I'm bad at my job, the worst thing that could happen is you could have a boring commute. If they're bad at their job, people die. So you just have to have better training. You have to have more with it leaders. You have to have plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E. And clearly that wasn't the case.
In my experience, when we went out and we were training, we had guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and they had a hard time keeping up. And this is my point. These guys got to be the best. They have to be the Michael Jordans. There's some stuff that's completely out of their control, obviously, like the winds. You know, I'll give the politicians that. But there are fundamentals that you can do to be the best that you can be. And like I said, why didn't they ask them to conserve water? Why didn't they give people a heads up? I'm not saying that this could have been completely avoided, but it could have probably been mitigated a lot better. Unfortunately, houses were going to be lost. But to this extent, I mean, I told some of my friends earlier today, or actually on Tuesday when I first saw it, first saw the plume, there's going to be 10 fatalities out of this. Hopefully there won't be more, but I think it's going to be around there. Piss poor planning equals poor performance. And they didn't get the fundamentals down. If Kobe wanted to win a game, he was sitting there and he was practicing his free throws and three-pointers and all that stuff. What I'm trying to say is most of the firemen, they work hard. They're great.
I don't think this was a failure of the firefighters on the line. I think this is a failure in management where they just didn't have the proper training. They didn't have the proper playbook to attack a fire like this by making sure, for example, that the fire hydrants had adequate supplies of water. Thank you for the call, Sarah. We've got 2 more hours coming up on the John Phillips Show. The Fix California Hour is next. Alex Michelson from Fox 11 joins us, and Nathan Hochman, the DA. Don't you go anywhere. This is Talk Radio 790 KABC.